It's the holiday season, and I would like to say a few words. Whoop-de-doo. Also, hickory dock. And your sock, don't forget to hang it up. This is just exactly the worst written Christmas song I've ever heard of, but you have heard of it, and many others. Which Christmas songs are your least favorite? Which fantastical songs are your favorite? And when should you start listening to any Christmas music anyway? How should Christians fight even politely over the secular songs versus the sacred Christmas songs? These and other controversies ahead. Hum along with us while we begin a new season of Fantastical Truth podcast, Christmas Magic. Season's greetings at Fantastical Truth, a podcast from Lorehaven.com in which we explore fantastical stories for God's glory and apply their meanings to the real world. I'm Stephen Burnett, Lorehaven's publisher and co-author of The Pop Culture Parent, enjoying a surprisingly chilly Christmas season here in Central Texas.
And I'm Zackary Russell, and all of the other reindeer used to laugh and call me names like Zach the Lego Maniac, and this is episode 140. When should you start playing Christmas music? Then what is the best and the worst?
Spoiler alert, you should start playing Christmas music the weekend before Thanksgiving. And I must say that in my family, I'm actually the conservative one. I think some of them start just after Halloween. Maybe on All Saints' Day is when they kick off. But what some curmudgeons would say, it's not the Christmas season, it's the Advent season. Christmas is only a day. You don't have an Easter season before Easter. You don't have a Christmas season before the day. And to that I say, with all seriousness, humbug. Celebrate Christmas for up to 1.5 months before the actual day. That's what I say.
My daughter recently asked me, why do we wait till the end of the year to celebrate Christmas? I'm like, well, I guess there's, I'm sure, a lot of history behind this, which I don't know.
It's a grand finale to the year.
Yeah. And I mean, it's it's near the longest night of the year, the darkest time. And that's when a light shone into the darkness, like John 1. That's how I've always thought of it. Like, why do we celebrate with lights? Well, it's because the darkness has not overcome the light of the world.
Yeah, we're starting this new series for Fantastical Truth. I've labeled it Christmas Magic. And in fact, Zach, I think I'm going to go back and retcon some of our previous Fantastical Truth holiday-themed episodes about Christmas and just put them into this series as honorary debuts. Some of my favorite episodes from 2020, we dealt with this weird evangelical book about toys, which kind of led into that whole idea of Christmas gifts and toy franchises and consumerism. We also had the Santa episode. Yes, that one. So we've got to talk about St. Nicholas. And there's other Christmas topics in the future that I'm sure we will address. Which leads me to our concession stand for this episode, featuring, of course, Christmas favorites like candy canes and chocolate drops. And if you are from the British Isles, tangerines. I understand they have tangerines running around, a special holiday tradition there. We are going to assume in this show that it's okay to celebrate Christmas. We're going to have more episodes about Christmas magic this month. And then actually this Christmas magic series is going to retcon previous Christmas themed episodes we've had on Fantastical Truth. We've had a Santa episode. We've talked about toys and consumerism. Those actually start this series. But maybe in the future, we'll have that episode about, is Christmas a pagan holiday? And maybe we'll drag in a historian who's not entirely sick of the topic. My take, of course, is that even if there are what you might say pagan songs or traditions, I'm on the side of the internet memes, Zach, which illustrate a very important biblical concept, is that Christians redeem pagan things on purpose. It can be risky if you are tempted to compromise with paganism. If so, stay away from the pagan thing. That's your weakness. But a strong Christian who's mature in her or his faith can certainly drag a tree into the house and celebrate the fact that God has created trees, and then we can do weird things with them, like hang electric lights on them, which is kind of weird if you think about it. But if you grew up doing it, it doesn't seem so weird. We, by the way, mean no insults to any classic or new artists. I roasted an Andy Williams song there at the top of this episode. I've got nothing against the chap. He has some other great songs. That song It's just really clunkily written. It's such a strange song, especially when you turn the word exactly into, 8 more syllables than that word should have. It's an oddly metered song.
Yeah, well, I think my grandmother is going to dig her way out of her grave and come hit you over the head because
she's the Andy
she
Williams
was a
fan?
huge Andy Williams fan.
Or
man.
of that particular song, though. That particular song.
I don't think she cared. She loved all his songs.
I don't know what Mouse's running up clocks have to do with Christmas. I don't know. You had to rhyme with sock, and
maybe that's why she loved it, because she was a clock collector, and so she I guess it all went together for her.
It's just so strange. Like, what hath that to do with Christmas? And you may as well ask, what do tangerines have to do with Christmas? Hey-oh, but then again, what do electric lights and all that stuff? All these things have just kind of built up, but then again, I don't see the connection. All due respect to, I think, the late Andy Williams. Music is like stories, and it can bring strong emotional reactions. So that's why we're keeping this a lighthearted roast when we do roast, and we're starting off with the positive stuff. All of this is tongue-in-cheek. And by the way, it's not just going to be Zach and I in the studio. We're bringing in some comments from heroes in the Lorehaven Guild. That's our exclusive Discord server that you can join simply by subscribing free at lorehaven.com. And then you too can join in the lighthearted roasting, but mostly praising of things like fantastical Christmas songs. By the way, Zach and I have to be careful with the lyric quoting, but if we're very festive, you might find us accidentally breaking into very, very public domain songs in this episode. But since I've said that in the concession stand, it's probably unlikely to happen, actually. What is likely to happen is our sponsor for this episode, returning champ Oasis Family Media. They have a new novel releasing today. It's called Calor from J.J. Fisher. It's book 1 in the Nightingale trilogy. The plot description says, what if you could edit memories with a single touch? The world that was is gone, lost to everything except living memory. But remembering comes at a terrible price. 62 years after the apocalypse, a new society has emerged from the ashes of the old world where highly valued memories are traded and nostalgia is worth dying and even killing for. Enslaved by a cruel master, Stephanie Winter is forced to use her rare ability to manipulate memories to numb the darkest secrets of the ruling aristocracy. This week's episode is sponsored by Enclave Publishers. They're the publishers of Calor, the Nightingale Trilogy, Book 1 by J.J. Fisher. That is available now today. You can find the link to the Amazon page in our show notes for episode 140, or go to lorehaven.com/podcast sponsors. Editing memories, nostalgia. That's perfect segue into our Christmas discussion, which starts with chapter 1. When should you start the Christmas music? I've actually seen a lot more internet fights about this. I think good-natured fights, Zach. I'll just lead with your answer, I guess. When do you all, your family, the Russells, start listening to Christmas music?
Yeah, we really didn't start till the day after Thanksgiving, like is custom with a lot of people. But it's interesting that you mentioned this, how the fight has been happening a lot on social media. Because I remember in 2020, when we were in the depths of the dark times, there were a lot of people saying, "Hey, let's," like they were saying in like October or July, even, "Hey, why don't we all put up Christmas lights, just to kind of cheer each other up? And you know what? Put up your Christmas tree whenever you want. Start singing Christmas songs whenever you want. I think we all need some cheer this year. It was a really tough year for everyone." And so it sort of broke down the boundaries of when all this was able to start. It was an interesting collision between that and this trend we've all noticed of stores putting up Christmas decorations and things in September. And I think most of our listeners probably are not big fans of that. But now we've kind of come back full circle of saying, hey, let's keep Christmas in its little box. Keep it in the box until Thanksgiving, and then you can take it out. But for me, it just happened naturally this year. Our church released a new Christmas album. I think it was the week of Thanksgiving they released it, and so I bought it. But then I just waited to turn it on until the Friday, and it was a perfect day to do it because that's when we decorated our Christmas tree. I think the music by itself doesn't really make sense until you're doing something Christmassy. You're putting up a tree, you're putting up lights. Like we have all these, we have a ton of decorations we put out for Christmas. We have a normal nativity scene and then like a kid's nativity scene that's all, little plastic people they love to play with, and then, plenty of other things. And so it just made sense to play it when we were getting all that out of the attic and setting it out.
That's a great point about waiting until you're doing Christmassy things like decorating. I think for the past several years, the default to which I've drifted is start listening to Christmas music the weekend before Thanksgiving, mainly just because we may be out of town for Thanksgiving. And so there's little time left to decorate when you get back. And it's nice to come back and everything's already decorated. But yeah, doing Christmassy things during the music makes sense. It also makes sense to get the most amount of time for the Christmassy season because Christmas Day is always on the 25th. And so it floats between weeks of the day or on the weekend. But Thanksgiving Day is always the fourth Thursday of November. So it floats. I mean, it can be at the very end of the month. And then sometimes it's a little bit earlier in the month. It's kind of strange just the way the calendar works. So I do it the weekend before, mainly just to inaugurate that decorating stage. Over in the Guild, Elijah David, one of our staff creators at Lorehaven, says, I can listen to Christmas music year round. However, I try to hold off on my official start, i.e., when others are subjected to my listening preferences, until November, closer to Thanksgiving, if I can last that long. Another chap says, and it's funny because everybody's got their usernames now changed to celebrate On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness by Andrew Peterson, the book quest that we've just finished up. Your average toothy cow, I'm guessing he'll change his name for the next book quest, says December, specifically the season of Advent. Start when Advent starts, end when it ends. I will caveat that the occasional song outside Advent is acceptable, but only occasionally. So, Zach, we got somebody here who's trying to honor that liturgical tradition known as Advent. There you start, I think, 4 Sundays before Christmas Day. Some people do the wreath ceremony where they have 4 different candles. A new candle is lit for every Sunday. A lot of evangelical and Protestant churches do that. It's a pretty old tradition corresponding with the celebration of Christmas. And I alluded to that at the top of the show, that some people will say, no, it's not Christmas yet. There's no Christmas season. Don't knock Advent season any more than you would knock Thanksgiving. I, for one, don't mind a Thanksgiving-Christmas overlap. I find it's kind of curmudgeonly when folks are complaining, no, it's Thanksgiving first and Christmas needs to wait its turn. Like, Thanksgiving is the warm-up act for the headliner performer, which is the Christmas season. I don't mind having a tree in the house when it's Thanksgiving. In fact, I kind of prefer it.
Yeah, I grew up in a traditional mainline denomination where we did more liturgical stuff, and so yeah, the Advent candles, that was a big thing. The bells, they would do that a lot. I go to a church now that's secretly Baptist, I guess, and more
Ninja Baptist,
Baptist, yeah, and we do some liturgical stuff. So, but I remember being surprised past Sunday because they didn't do the candle, but maybe they'll do it this Sunday. They hadn't put up the Christmas decorations yet, and they actually did that after the service. So I guess we'll see. There was someone in our guild, Mr. Roboto, who said Christmas music start date at work is November 1st, but my personal start date is the Friday after Thanksgiving. So now that's kind of an interesting conundrum. You, our listener, you may work somewhere where they play the music whenever they want to start, and you may not have a choice when you have to hear it. And if again, there may be songs that you may like, so it may not be that big a deal. There may be songs you hate, and you're like, why do they have to start this 3 weeks early? That brings up an interesting point that a lot of people will hear these songs even if they don't play them themselves.
So I've not personally worked in retail like Mr. Roboto, but I understand pragmatically why you would put up the Christmas decorations early. Sure, there's some free market reasons there, time to get started on Christmas. And then, if they were to wait until November 15th, halfway through the month, and then put up the Christmas decorations, it almost seems too late. I mean, the season actually starts a lot quicker than you always anticipated starting. But also it makes sense because if you're moving out all the Halloween stuff and putting those on on markdown, trying to clear them out for a 50% off sale or something, then why not just go ahead and move the Christmas stuff into that space? Why wait a couple of weeks and kind of lose your momentum there? I can guess that that's how that happens. And then, of course, if you're going to have the Christmas trees up front and all the decorations and such and the candies in the special aisle and all of that, why not then go ahead and do the Christmas music? I tend to tune that stuff out when I go into the store any earlier than that first full week before Thanksgiving Day. But then again, I have the luxury of doing that because I'm just visiting the store. I don't actually work there. So Godspeed to all the employees who have to put up with the Christmas music, including some of the terrible songs that we will talk about in chapter 3 of this episode. I'm glad that I do have the privilege of starting the Christmas music when I want to. But I think one of our heroes did mention, oh, it was Eli who mentioned that, yeah, you have to restrain yourself out of respect for the taste of those around you. I mean, music is, we're having fun with it, but as I said in the concession stand, it is a very emotional thing. People will especially have strong associations with Christmas, with the Christmas season, and strong associations with certain songs. There's mental and imaginative pathways that music does for us, just like stories do for us. And so we do want to enjoy what we enjoy when we want to enjoy it, but because we're in community, we're made to live with other people. We have to respect, love their preferences too.
Now, the thing I just now thought of is, when do your churches start Christmas music? Because I would think it'd be strange to hear a church in mid or early November or even October start playing Christmas songs. I don't think I've ever been to a church that does that, nor have I really been to a church that plays any Christmas music in January or later. It's always in December that we hear those songs. But I wonder if that has happened, because there almost are some songs that seem like they could happen other times. They don't have to be at Christmas, but I imagine that if a if the worship pastor played something on November 1st in church, he'd probably hear about it from some people like, "No, don't bring out the Christmas songs yet. We got to wait."
Well, technically, that Christmas season, if you can call it that, and maybe your church or liturgical tradition has a different phrase, could arguably last until Epiphany, which, if I recall correctly, is
Hmm.
January 5th, 12 days
Okay.
after Christmas.
That's right, the
And
12 days of Christmas.
I
Yeah.
always kind of start that clock in my head after Christmas Day and think, okay, anytime after January 5th, it's probably time to take the decorations down. Like, just because some of those habits help, some of those habits of celebration, like you're kind of running this clock in your head and thinking liturgically or whatever. It's this season and now it's that season. Although in Texas, I will say, Zach, that generally a lot of our snow, if we ever get any snow and ice, is more likely to happen in late January or early
February.
February. Yeah. So if you have any hope of a white post Christmas, I kind of want to keep at least the outdoor lights up for longer, because then you get that effect of the lights in the snow, which our popular culture has trained us to expect, but which the state of Texas is stubbornly trying to train me not to expect. Well, I'm going to hold on to my traditions, and I'm going to be a stubborn older person, darn it, if I can help it. Most of the heroes in our guild, where they were talking about the timing of when to start listening to music, the threshold is almost always Thanksgiving Day. It's the week of Thanksgiving, before or after. We didn't talk about when to stop listening to the Christmas music, but I stopped listening right around Epiphany, I guess, because I just want to make it last a little longer. If you got time off from work, which I do, you may have some time between Christmas Day and New Year's Day. Like, for me, it's always going to overlap into at least the first few days of January, especially if the cold weather takes its time getting here to the place where I live. I want to hold on to it, but not so much. I do want to keep the Christmas music special. I don't want to exceed listening to Christmas music or keeping the decorations up. I don't want to exceed 2 months. That feels a little too long to me. By about the time Epiphany rolls around, you start feeling, okay, it's time to clean up. It's time to reset to normal, and then look forward to starting the Christmas music and putting out the decorations right around that Thanksgiving week.
Okay, Stephen, time for some true confessions, though. When is the latest you have left decorations up at your house?
Probably halfway through January. I can remember. Well, I can remember the few times that we've had a live tree. That thing starts looking awful crispy, and that's why it helps. If you put up a tree at all, it does help to have a live tree. If it's going to have kind of an expiration date, and it just feel like you've got this corpse in your living room, it just gets kind of sad, and you feel like a hoarder. So it's time to get that thing out of there. It has its own little ticking clock. That's the disadvantage, though, getting a live tree, is that you have to get it later. And I want to put my Christmas tree up right around Thanksgiving. That's the advantage to the artificial tree, and you can also leave without worrying about the thing not getting any water, and then the sap clogs the pores down there in the trunk that's stuck down in the plastic stand thing. And then it just gets all weird. It is weird, isn't it, though, bringing a live tree into your house? I mean, this episode is about decorations, but it does kind of overlap. Yeah, but it's weird. But then again, lots of Christmas traditions are weird, and yet we hold on to them, certainly as Christians, and then even those who are not Christians have caught wind and they join in the celebrating too. And if you know where to look, there are some very deep church history traditions behind these things. I forget who was the guy, Saint Blast. How do you pronounce it? Saint Boniface or whoever it was who supposedly interrupted the worship of Thor and then cut down the tree. And then that was the first Christmas tree. So
you're saying it's not pagan appropriation?
I don't think. It's pagan subversion. If you believe in that legend, then yes, it is a subversion of paganism. Christ conquers the celebrations of Saturnalia and the feasting and worship of the heathen gods. We then, like ancient Israel, immigrating out of Egypt, take the Egyptian gold with us, and then ultimately turn it into a service for the one true God, Yahweh. So that's how I look at it. I know other people have some other sensitivities, particularly if you don't want, Santa to take over the Christmas season. But for that, we could refer to our Santa Claus episode, retconned as one of the first episodes of this Christmas Magic series.
Yeah, Naomi is friends with someone, I believe from Japan, that thought it was so weird that we put a live tree in the house because it's like, doesn't that belong
bonkers
outside? Yeah, I mean, a plant is one thing, but an entire tree, like, what are you doing? And we had some international students over the day after Thanksgiving, and that was so fun to decorate with them because they had never done that before. They were from different parts of East Asia and East Africa, and yeah, for them that was a brand new experience. And then we got it done really fast, which was nice. But I'll go and answer my own question and confession here, which is the latest we've had a tree, or at least I put it on the curb on Valentine's Day one year.
Oh, wow.
So this would have been about maybe 10 years ago or so. And I think I put it outside in the backyard for a while. I don't think I waited until Valentine's Day to take it out of the house because, like you said, it starts to die. But I don't think I dealt with it until mid-February. But the funny thing that happened was I was teaching my oldest daughter at the time, when she was real little, to ride a bike. And I let go at one point and she kind of circled around and then she crashed, but she happened to hit the tree. And so we've always joked about that, like, hey, isn't that great that Dad waited so long because it saved your knees from getting all skinned up?
That's just a wonderful Hallmark moment there.
Yes,
the
exactly.
Christmas tree corpse saved her. Now, if that's the standard, though, then I will say the longest I've held on to a previous dead tree was until last month. I'm not kidding.
Okay.
We put it out near where we keep the garbage dumpsters and kept thinking, well, we'll chop it up for firewood because, pine branches, dead ones, make pretty good fire starters. They flare up real quickly and you have to be careful with them. But they do. And I just never got around to it. So when I was doing some cleanup out there just this last month, working in my garage, I thought, okay, now it's finally time to throw this thing out. This is getting a little weird. I just forgot it was out there. We were doing gardening in the backyard, but anyway, decorations, music, it's all the same here.
That piece of wood will come in handy at some point,
Oh, it absolutely will. And so will that old charger cord. Well, let's move now to our favorite Christmas songs after pausing to acknowledge our second sponsor for this episode. It's a new one for the month of December, author Rachel A. Greco, and her book is called The Gift of Dragons. Here's that description. The fate of two species rests on the tip of a dagger. Ever since the Gendelians murdered her sister, Adelaide has plotted a rebellion to overthrow the king and prince who failed to protect them during the attack. Following her across the country is a stranger, not just any stranger, but the prince she's hoping to overthrow, and Adelaide's plans begin to collapse. But Prince Elias has his own dangerous secrets connected to the dragons that once lived in the land. If he can't earn Adelaide's trust, there may never be any peace for Adelaide, her people, or the dragons. That's the book, The Gift of Dragons by Rachel A. Greco. You can find more information, the book cover, and the links for purchase in our show notes for episode 140, or go to our more detailed page at lorehaven.com/podcast sponsors. Zach, let's go to chapter 2. What are the best fantastical Christmas songs? And this is the one where we get to be positive. We get to celebrate. We get to acknowledge the beauty of the in-depth theology that you find in many Christmas hymns over the last few hundred years, as well as some secular songs that happen along and kind of pull out the more mainstream iterations of the holiday, what C.S. Lewis would have called Xmas, that competitive event that happens to be scheduled at the same time as Christmas. That was Lewis at his most Scrooge-like mode there, but he had some point, especially about the consumerism. So, okay, late concession. Yeah, there'll be some secular songs in here too, but I do favor the sacred songs most of all. But let's get to my preferences here in a little bit. Let me jump back into our guild here.
Yeah, I want to mention one of our guild heroes, Dr. Dave. He said he loves We Three Kings, and he also says, I listen to any music I feel like listening to in that moment. So I'm picturing Dr. Dave listening to this song, in March or July or whatever. And but he likes the song because of the verse that says, "Born a king on Bethlehem's plain, gold I bring to crown him again, king forever, ceasing never, over us all to reign."
Amen.
Great lyric.
There's that in-depth theology there. We Three Kings has some great stuff, despite being technically extra biblical. The Magi are not described as kings, and we don't know where they're from technically. You rely on a lot of church.
They're kings in like the social media sense, like you're
exactly
a king.
Yeah, you're my king. King move. It was a king move to jump on a camel, presumably, and ride all that distance. Maybe not from the Orientar, but from Persia or wherever they came from. It's a mystical land. It's kind of legendary there. That's why they're so iconic. And that's why the song is so great. Mrs. Booklove Steph says, a few of my favorite Christmas hymns are Joy to the World, God Rest Ye Merry Gentlemen, Angels We Have Heard on High, and O Come All Ye Faithful. My favorite Christmas album is When My Heart Finds Christmas by Harry Connick Jr. I feel like it's a must listen when I'm doing my Christmas baking, one of my Christmas traditions. I love the big band sound and the mix of classic Christmas hymns with fun holiday songs. I like that mix too. I'm not familiar with that particular album, but those 4 hymns that she mentioned here, those are among my favorites too, especially Joy to the World. There was a cassette I grew up listening to. It was called Salty's Christmas Calamity, featuring the evangelical hero, Salty the Singing Songbook, from a franchise, especially in the 1980s. Salty had songs in himself, but they would only work if you're praising the Lord from your heart. So early training about sincere expressions of worship through song there. Thanks, Salty and his creators. And in Salty's Christmas Calamity, he and his ever-present kids are trying to put on a Christmas pageant, but everything goes wrong when they try to wash his dusty pages, and all the Christmas songs just whatever magic system Salty uses. They wouldn't say that. I'm just saying that. All the songs sounded all watery and strange after that. But before that, they did this, for the time, certainly, and for my exposure, this epic version of Joy to the World, which forever made that probably my top most favorite Christmas hymn, which is funny because it's not about Christmas. It is about the eschaton. It is about Christ's return to earth this second time, which is hinted in the incarnation. But here, Christ has come to the world to reign and not to be the suffering servant and do healing and teaching ministry. So that's one of those songs that you could sing after Christmas and really technically the whole year round, but it somehow has gotten associated with Christmas. And I'm okay with that.
Yeah. Another guild hero I want to point to is actually author Sharon Hink. We've talked about her books before on the podcast. And she mentioned a song I had never. So she said she loves, first of all, O Come, Emmanuel, which I'm very familiar with.
I love it.
But then a more obscure Christmas song I've never heard of called Winds Through the Olive Trees. And I just looked up this song. And side note, have you guys ever tried to look up lyrics for any song and you pull up these websites that are just like, they attack you with so many ads? Like, it's really hard to find good lyric websites. If you have any, please let us know. But the lyrics to this song are pretty interesting. I don't know the tune, and I'm not going to sing anyway. It says, winds through the olive trees softly did blow, round little Bethlehem long, long ago. Sheep on the hillside lay, whiter than snow. Shepherds were watching them long, long ago. Then from the happy sky, angels bent low, singing their songs of joy long, long ago. For in a manger bed, cradled we know, Christ came to Bethlehem long, long ago. That's pretty neat. And maybe it's the long, long ago, like it kind of evokes
a long time
Star
ago
Wars.
In a land far away. Yeah. There's a new album that I started loving. I think it was just last year, although I think it came out the year before. My brother recommended it to me as a top example of epic Christmas music. There's kind of an overuse of the word epic to describe a lot of people doing music on YouTube, particularly in the cinematic film score type genre. But this one was called "The Birth of a King" by an artist named Tommy Prophet. I'd never heard of him before, but it's genuinely epic, and he collaborates with a lot of both secular and inspirational artists like David Crowder, and the songs are awesome. Just they just sizzle with this epic scale. Like there's his "O Come, O Come Emmanuel" is a little more rambunctious than some of the more sacred choir sounding versions that we hear. And then he does, a hip hop version of this other song. And then he takes things back down to that more traditional sound for a song like Silent Night. And he has two artists doing a duet for "Oh Holy Night," which is just all crescendo, but just the best version of that song that I think I've heard. He remixes "Away in the Manger," makes the tune a little different, and I just love that album. That's actually the first one that I started listening to when I started listening to my Christmas music this year. I also love Mannheim Steamroller. Michael W. Smith has three also great Christmas albums. His first one is just called Christmas. It's very simple, but has some epic flair to it. His second one is a little bit more of a Broadway type sound, which I really enjoy. And then his third one is just all orchestral and vocal performances. He hasn't released a new one since then. I think that one was out in 2007. Eli David says his favorite albums are, of course, "Behold the Lamb of God" by Andrew Peterson. That's another great one. We own that one. He says "A Charlie Brown Christmas" by Vince Guaraldi. Hope I pronounced that right. "And Winter Came" by Enya. I like that one too. "The Light Came Down," Josh Garrel's Christmas songs, "Jars of Clay," and a few others there. Lots of people were naming not just their favorite songs, but their favorite albums. Like we got some lists here of like 24 items on there. People take this really seriously, and I like that. It's like there's a whole other genre of music you would just call Christmas. But within that genre, I think it's the wrong word, are so many other flavors of songs, both sacred and secular. Note my air quotes there.
Yeah, I was going to point out a couple songs here on the list from Your Average Toothy Cow Wrangler, which I guess that's a reference.
Oh, that was
to
the full name of there. Okay, yeah.
And so he likes "Carol of the Bells," the August Burns Red version, and the Trans-Siberian Orchestra version.
Oh yeah,
and,
that one's groovy. The Trans-Siberian. Oh, by the way, Trans-Siberian orchestras are human orchestras, by the way. Just wanted to point that out. Saw that at random on social media.
Yeah, Naomi loves that song. Now, I'm going to be a little contrarian here. I'm not a huge fan of Trans-Siberian Orchestra anymore. I used to be. There was this one house that would play that song through like an FM transmitter in our area, and you could go drive by and listen to it.
Oh.
And they had these crazy decorations, and I'm like, wow, that's pretty amazing. But now I'm like way overstimulated and need a nap because it just like
I can see, I can hear, I can feel the effects of that through an FM transmitter. It would be a little overwhelming. I think Trans-Siberian Orchestra is actually the holiday brand of a metal band or something. I haven't looked into it that much. I'm mainly familiar with that song. I'm sure I've heard some others too.
Yeah, let's see. "It's the Most Wonderful Time of the Year," "Joy to the World." Okay, "Mary, Did You Know," which I know a lot of people are going to have mixed feelings on that song, but that's
Batman Slaps Robin. Yes, song. She knew.
Yeah, and then "Oh Holy Night," and that is my all-time favorite. So I'm going to talk about that.
Okay.
I love this line in "Oh Holy Night." "Till he appeared and the soul felt its worth." That I just love that line. It's funny. I always think that's going to come up in verse 2 or verse 3, but I think this is such a great song. It's hard to sing, but it's amazing when you've got a very talented singer or a choir. Of course, I think there is that moment in Home Alone where the choir is singing this, and that's kind of a neat moment in that story. But this is a beautiful song. Of course, "The stars are brightly shining. It is the night of the dear Savior's birth."
Yeah, fortunately, it's public domain, so we can quote the lyrics.
"Long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. Thrill of hope, the weary world, the weary soul, or the weary world
I've heard
rejoices."
both. I've had both versions. I like "weary world" because Christ came not just to save particular souls, and yet he does, but he also saves the world, the cosmos, the physical creation.
Yeah, so that's a wonderful song, very gospel saturated. A couple other songs I like. Another personal favorite for me is "What Child Is This?" Now I learned how to play that, but I learned how to play that as Greensleeves when I was a kid taking piano lessons.
And did you hear about the origins of that name?
And so I knew the story growing up, and I've kind of refreshed myself with the story. So this is really interesting. So I knew that Greensleeves was like a bar tune in England in the mid 1800s.
But why should the devil have all the best music?
Yes, and so that it brings up a very interesting. So just for our listener that may not be aware, Greensleeves was a bar tune, and it has sort of a kind of a seedy meaning to it. It is basically about a man falling in love with a woman of the night, and you can read the lyrics and figure that out for yourself. But the a composer named William Chatterton Dix was the manager of an insurance company, according to Wikipedia. Says he was afflicted by an unexpected and severe illness that resulted in him being bedridden and suffering from severe depression. His near death experience brought about a spiritual renewal while he was recovering. During this time, he read the Bible comprehensively and was inspired to author hymns like Alleluia, Sing to Jesus, and As with Gladness Men of Old. And then around 1865, he wrote What Child Is This? But he published it in 1871. And yes, it sort of kicked off this whole debate of, well, can we use musical tunes that are used for secular and kind of sinful songs? If you read the lyrics, of that original song, but that's always been one of my favorite songs, because What Child Is This is another beautiful song with the lyrics, and again, growing up learning piano is a really easy song to learn. And so I would play that at Christmas time in my family.
And now Christmas time is the only association that almost anyone has with that song. So it is a successful creative subversion of a song that is discussing, if not celebrating, an act of sin back in that century. Now it was broken, but it has been remade. I wonder then about the lyrics of some Christmas songs, even really great ones like "Oh Holy Night." That, like, does anybody out there like kind of want to change some of those? Like Zach, you mentioned the "Till He appeared and the soul felt its worth." I find that it's a little man centered, so just in my head, I kind of swap that around for "the soul felt His worth." I think that makes it a little more gospely there. I'm being a little tongue in cheek here, but I do love "A Holy Night." I'm not being serious. I don't mind singing "The Soul Felt Its Worth." I just think that lyrically, it almost sounds better too, just putting in "The soul felt His worth." By the way, that's another reason then to sing "A Thrill of Hope," "The weary world rejoices," because you just said soul, and otherwise it sounds a little redundant. I love it when artists sing the second verse of "A Holy Night." It's very abolition focused there. "Chains shall he break, for the slave is our brother, and in his name all oppression shall cease."
Yeah.
Sounds kind of woke. No, it's not. That is just an appropriate influence of Christian social ethics applied directly to an issue that was very important at the time that hymn was written. And so I love it now being kind of a historical monument to how believers were thinking back then. I don't know about the religious faith of the person who wrote that song, but that meaning is biblical, and it is an application, well, not the only one, of Christ coming to earth to set man free from oppression. First, the oppression that is because of sin and evil in our own hearts, and then this wonderful secondary effect of setting us free from the oppression by other people, by folks who are in power, who are abusing that power. So I love Only Night. I love Hark the Herald Angels Sing. I think that's a Charles Wesley song. Love that version. Back to Holy Night. One of my favorite versions of that is actually by Michael Crawford and a
Okay.
children's choir, and I think it's orchestrated by David Foster. That one is just so wonderful. It's everybody seems to bring their epic A game to "Oh Holy Night," and I love it that a song with that history and that depth challenges artists to elevate their game.
Yeah. There's two more songs I want to talk about. One is a little more whimsical, and this may surprise some of our listeners. Frosty the Snowman. I grew up loving that song. I still like it because it's this whimsical tale, and yes, it's about the more secular side of the season, the Xmas holiday, as you said, Stephen. But I just think it's such a fun story that these kids make a snowman and then he comes alive and then they go on adventures together. Like, what a great story. It's fantastical. It's fun. It's relatively safe of a story, I guess. And growing up, I grew up here in Central Texas. We barely ever had snow. And so anytime it did snow or anytime we traveled to where there was snow, I always wanted to make a snowman. And when you're a little kid, you think, oh, maybe this snowman will come alive. And then, of course, I started reading Calvin and Hobbes later in elementary school, middle school, and Calvin makes all kinds of crazy snowmen, the Snowman House of Horrors, and does all kinds of pranks on his parents and neighbors with snowmen. So, but that I don't know, just a lot of fun memories from that song.
Some people hate the song "Little Drummer Boy," and then maybe this needs to go under your worst Christmas songs category. I don't mind it. It's a little cheesy. It's a little man-centered. It's not so much about Jesus, but it's about this fictional character who performs for Jesus and then gets a smile. Okay, it's kind of cheesy, but if you make it epic, like several artists have done, there's a great kind of hip hoppy version by Go Fish. And then, of course, I imagine the folks at For King and Country are maybe sick of that song by now, but they do an absolutely epic, very drum heavy version of that song. They famously performed it live, and I really like that song now for no other reason than they just made it awesome. So I'm curious then, faithful listener, like what are some Christmas songs you thought you wouldn't like, and then along came somebody who did it awesomely. Sometimes that can just happen. There's also, Zach, you've already mentioned some obscure songs. Some folks in the guild thread here were talking about some more obscure songs that you've already mentioned. There's one that doesn't get enough love, I think. It's Once in Royal David City. I really like that one. I don't know. There's such a sweetness to the melody, and yet maybe the fact that it's not being done as much by other artists makes it more appealing to me. There's some other more secular songs that people were talking about. And by the way, we don't use secular as a pejorative here. I'm just saying that it's not necessarily a Christ-focused song. More about that, the secular version of the season. Mr. Roboto, I think he's mentioning favorite songs: Chestnuts Roasting on an Open Fire, Let It Snow. Oh, he actually does, or at least he's mentioning Santa Baby here, which is not my favorite song in the world. It's the most wonderful time of the year. A good one that's famously sung by Andy Williams. Silver Bells. I like Silver Bells, especially the Bing Crosby version. And of course, White Christmas. Speaking of Bing Crosby, I wonder how much he hated that song.
Mhm.
I'd like to think that the earnestness with which old Bing would perform that song was earnest every time. And I'm just would like to keep that headcanon very much.
Mhm.
Of course, there's Rockin' Around the Christmas Tree. And what's the other one that may be the same song? Jingle Bell Rock. I think those are actually the same song. Very 50s, very enamored with this new thing called rock that all the kids are into, and that's also been grafted into the holiday season. Holly Jolly Christmas and Silver and Gold. Yeah, we have some infusion and new energy from the Rankin Bass Christmas specials, and that's two of them that have withstood the test of time. And then, oh yeah, there's some confusion with Joy to the World, which is also noted as Jeremiah was a bullfrog. What a strange coincidence there. It's too bad
Interesting.
you can't
Oh, it's the
copyright the
same
song
tune?
titles. No, it's not the same tune.
Oh.
It has nothing to do with Christmas.
Okay.
It includes the words "Joy to the World" for some reason.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
right.
but it's
Yeah.
not the actual one. Yeah. All right. Well, the rest of them I'm seeing here I'm sure we didn't read everybody's comment, but there's also some negative songs here that we'll get to in just a moment.
Yeah. Well, one final favorite song, and Naomi had to remind me of this one because it's been a while since we've heard it, and it's a very obscure song. I almost never hear it anywhere. It's called Room Around the Manger. And it took me a while to find the lyrics to this song. All I could find for a while were just YouTube videos. I don't even know how to get this song. But the lyrics are there's a place for you, a place for me. There's room around the manger. Come inside and you will find there's room around the manger. Jesus is God's gift to every boy and girl. Come and worship him. There's room for all the world. Then it goes back to the chorus. And I don't know, there was just something about our kids singing this when they were in preschool that was very endearing. I mean, Naomi was starting to cry as she was kind of remembering the lyrics. And I think it's so simple. Like kids can understand this and they really, it helps them understand the Christmas message that Jesus is for the whole world. And he's open, he opens his arms to anyone and everyone. So it's a wonderful song. If you can find it on YouTube and sing with your kids, I don't think you'll be disappointed.
If you want a song to make your eyes water, not only with the beauty of the performance, but also the depth of the theology, I actually recommend we may just stay here praising the songs that we love, and I think that's better. But I love Michael W. Smith's '80s album, his first Christmas album, just called Christmas. There are two songs right in the middle of that relatively short album. I don't think I can quote the lyrics because I think they're still under rights. But the song titles are "No Eye Had Seen," which is a duet with Amy Grant, and then there's the very next one is called "All Is Well," which is featuring a children's choir, and those songs just sizzle with Christ exaltation. Similarly, Smith's last Christmas album, done by himself at least, the more orchestral one, "It's a Wonderful Christmas," in the mid 2000s, there's a song on there called "Son of God." That one has some of the most beautiful, epic, in-depth writing and like Christ exalting wordplay that I wish I could quote some of the words here, particularly that line about the sacred sky. There's another one. Oh, that's right. In the older album, there's another one about, I forget the title of it, but it's discussing like the language of creation and how God has revealed His final word. Other slogans I wish I could quote, but it is a meditation, is what it is, on John chapter 1, and it's all biblical, but feels all new at the same time. And like that's where you know you've got an A-list Christmas song, and few people even know what that is. I don't think it gets on the radio. It's not a popular Christmas song, but it deserves to be more well known, I think. If I can, I'll put those links in the show notes, but we can't have a whole string of YouTube videos for every song in the show notes, certainly not the positive ones, but you'll just have to take my word for it and go find that one for yourself. So if we're ready, we're going to go a little more negative here, but we must pause first and discuss hell. Now, these songs are not going to send you to hell, but Brian Mitchell's novel Infernal Fall certainly goes there, with a lot of connections to Dante's Inferno. Here's the description. Despite falling into hell, Daniel Strong is alive. A demon coaxes him deeper and plans to take him to Satan. Hell and its many horrors weigh heavily on Daniel. His hopes decay, but the Holy Spirit remains with him. Will he give in to the darkness? Will he find his way home? Infernal Fall is a modern twist on Dante's Inferno. Grab your copy today and discover if there is a way out of hell. Kirkus Review says of this novel, a remarkable cast of characters guides readers across a terrifying but compelling landscape. That's the endorsement from Kirkus Review of Brian Mitchell's novel Infernal Fall. See that awesome cover and the links and more info in our show notes for episode 140, or go to lorehaven.com/podcast sponsors. All right, we're going to stay on Earth. It is not so bad, even if we're talking about the worst Christmas songs you've ever heard of, but that is the topic of our third chapter. Zach, let's say we start with some of the more negative pronouncements by heroes of the guild. A lot more positivity in there. That's the kind of community that we want. But let me scroll through here. I think the first one I see here is from your average toothy cow wrangler. Name probably changed after the Andrew Peterson book quest. He says the most modern, thumbs down emoji, most modern non-hymn Christmas songs, especially specifically All I Want for Christmas Is You. By the professing queen of Christmas, although the phrase remains untrademarked, Mariah Carey. Exception, the Gun Drummer version on YouTube. The hippopotamus song, correct. That is an evil song. And of course, I Saw Mommy Kissing Santa, which nods toward potential infidelity for laughs and is therefore unfit for human consumption. I think that he is absolutely correct. These songs are annoying. They are filler songs. I don't think Christians should listen to them, or else they are not making Jesus the reason for the season.
Wait, is the hippopotamus one the one that says like "Hip hip hooray, God made us"?
No,
is that the one I'm thinking of?
No, that's the one that in which the child, the obnoxious child, like kind of the '60s teeny bopper performer voice. I forget who it is. I don't want to insult your preferences. If you like the song, that's just how it sounds to me. Proclaims very loudly that the vocalist wants this animal under the tree this holiday season. I'm trying to synonymize, so I'm not quoting the song. I don't want to break anybody's rights of the song, but yeah, apparently only this particular gift will do. I think that's the same song as that. All I Want for Christmas Is My Two Front Teeth. Maybe it's a hippopotamus with 2 front teeth. I don't know. Those are quite possibly the very same song.
Okay. Well, one of mine that I'll share in my naughty list, my worst list.
Oh, that is a naughty list song.
Is ironically Santa Claus is Coming to Town. Now, if you
that's a legalistic
if you go
song,
back and
so yeah.
yes, if you go back and listen to our episode, I forget, Stephen, you'll have to remind me which episode this was. We did talk about Santa Claus at one point, and now I have some good memories of Santa Claus, and it was always fun to just wake up and all these presents are there and just kind of imagine that Santa Claus would come there, find the milk and cookies, slightly eaten and consumed. And then at some point in my childhood, my cousin and I built a booby trap for Santa Claus. And we I guess we figured if we trapped him that he would have to give us more gifts. I think we were sort of mixing in the whole leprechaun myth with Santa Claus, and man, that was
kill
so
the
much
golden
fun.
goose. Yeah, that's not wise. Plus, you're messing with the Fae there, and that you don't try to pull tricks on the Fae.
And then
bad juju.
Then we even slept in front of the fireplace so that we would get woken up as soon as he
your
set
parents
off all the
must
bells.
have been exhausted that
night. Maybe they drugged us or something to get us out of there, but yes, the lyrics for this song, I mean, I don't think this is copyrighted, right? I think we can read it.
I don't know. I think I don't know. Let me tell you what. See if you can synonymize the lyrics while I looked it up.
Well, I'll just say someone made a meme where they had one of those giant blow up Santa Clauses in their front yard, the yard decorations, and they turned the Santa Claus around so that it's facing the second story window of someone's bedroom. And then they captioned it with, "He sees you when you're sleeping." And yes, it's like, I think the caption was "Surveillance Santa." And
we don't need any of that anymore.
Yeah, and so that is the
CCP
the dark
sees you
side.
when you're sleeping. They know when you're awake, so you better be good, or else they're going to turn your QR code red
social
on
credit
your
score down.
Smartphone.
Yeah. So this was this was the bad part of Santa, is that I definitely lived in fear of getting coal in my stocking because of songs like this that sort of reinforced that idea that Santa was keeping a social credit score of my behavior.
It was a different time. Like, it was a time where you would have like little tabletop decorations of people spanking naughty little children. Like, the sense of humor was just different then. Like, I don't know if we're improved much now, but I think regardless of your stance on how you discipline your children, like, please take it more seriously than making whimsical decorations and songs out of it. It is more serious. This act of training your children in the way they should go. Like, I don't think we should have those cute little decorations about it. That's just the wrong kind of kitsch. It rubs me all the wrong way. And I don't think it's just a personal objection. Like, I think it is objectively, like, it's just, there's kind of an ick to it. And I mean, I'm not going to turn off Santa Claus is Coming to Town unless it's the Michael Jackson version. Then I am jabbing that radio knob so hard I might leave a mark on myself. If not the radio. I don't like it. No, I mean, no objection to Michael Jackson. It's just a really grossly exuberant version of the song, and I don't know if I like the alternate tune, but yeah, I don't like that. I don't like legalistic Santa. I think it was actually, we talked about that in our episode 44. It's Christian leaders like John Piper who associate Santa Claus so much with this song and that, good or naughty nice list mythos that they can't separate the legendary Santa as a symbol of grace from this legalistic mechanism that has been used to terrify children, or even if the parents don't know any better, the children will pick this up and make themselves feel terrified because children are really, really effective at doing that. I'm not fond of the meaning of the song, even if I don't hate the song itself. Lots of people, though, hate the song with a hot hatred. Last Christmas. And several heroes in the guild singled this song out for particular ire, and I think they're correct. And even if the lyrics were public domain, I don't want to say the lyrics because they has the dumb. It doesn't even make sense that you could give someone your heart and then the very next day they would give it away. Are we doing some kind of Edgar Allan Poe thing? Is this the Telltale Heart? Is this one of those Christmas horror crossover movies where violent Santa gets an axe and starts killing everybody? I've made my opinions known about that too. Anyway, it's just one of those dumb pop synth something something wrong with
It's
that
sort of like a
song. I don't like it.
romantic comedies, angsty, I don't know, tragedy.
Yeah, I just say meh so hard to that song that, I mean, I will turn it off if that comes on the radio.
Yeah.
And I don't even listen to the radio. I remember turning it off before when it came on the radio, along with the "Do They Know It's Christmas at All?" Or is that the same song?
Yeah.
Which one is it that's like the
Mm.
really social justicey song that aims to guilt you? Like what the starving children in the other continent don't celebrate Christmas, so why should you? Repent,
Oh,
sinner.
wow.
That's the general impression I get from that song, and for that reason, I object to it.
Yeah.
I mentioned earlier, a lot of people don't like Little Drummer Boy. I'm okay with that.
Naomi hates the song "Grandma Got Run Over by a Reindeer,"
Oh,
and
that song is despicable.
I think I don't remember this very well, but I don't remember enjoying it. But interestingly, Sheriff in the Guild loves that song. She says it's her guilty pleasure. So there you go. One man's or one woman's trash is another woman's treasure, I guess.
It's another man's guilty pleasure. Yes, exactly. I put a picture in the Guild that we're trying to do more behind the scenes about the podcast. We have a picture of the Andy Williams Christmas album. Now,
Yeah.
no shade on Andy Williams, as I said at the top of the show. But I did mention that song at the top of the show. I think it's just called "It's the Holiday Season." And it does include the words whoop-de-doo and the words hickory dock, or is it dickory dock? I can't tell. It's just, what does that have to do with anything? But the silliest part is where it's just exactly at 12 o'clock. I think I can say that. And then just the pinnacle of Christmas honoring writing is that Santa's a great big bundle of joy. It's just a random observation thrown in there about the nature of good old Saint Nicholas. It's just a helpful reminder right in the middle of the song, wildly disconnected from the phrases at either side. It's just the best writing I've ever heard of, but the song is everywhere. Probably because he sings it with gusto, and it seems to be a happy, jolly soul. I think the late Andy Williams there. But anyway, I posted that album in our thread here in the Guild, and Nick of the Wastes replied, "This picture activates my fight or flight response." Well, I don't know if I'd go that far, but yeah, I think there's some songs that do activate that response. And most likely I will choose flight because other people like the songs. And, if you're yelling at us right now on the podcast, then your fight response is activated against us. Like, I don't want to fight. It's a season of peace and joy and giving and goodwill toward men. But the songs are dumb and I don't like them.
Okay, now I must ask you about. I know we're a little late getting into this controversy, but what about the song "Baby It's Cold Outside"?
Oh dear.
Like or dislike?
Oh dear. Dislike, dislike for the era. Dislike for the era because on interpretation, if I were hearing like the first version of that song, it is a little risque. It is a little risque back then when you took these things very seriously. Men and women needed to show propriety and not joke about things like that. I think the best interpretation of that song comes from author Mark Stein, who's a very, very culturally conservative guy. Like, he's guest hosted talk radio and everything, but he's also just a song and dance man. He loves music, and he writes about music and popular culture a lot, particularly old Broadway and show tunes and things like that. So he has some great observations about that song. I may need to review that. And I think it was him and some others who've said, hey, the interpretation of that song is that people are joking. Like, it's a joke that these two people who are in some kind of a dating relationship, and they feel the freedom and the security to joke about things like that. But if you were to make a story adaptation of that song, then he's going to leave. He's not actually going to do anything to her. They're just joking about that from a position of security. Now, I think a lot of people who complain about that song, they don't have that security. And you can argue about why, or you can argue about whether they're being oversensitive, but I get it. I don't hate the song, but I get people getting more emotional about it because, like, don't even joke about things like that. Don't even joke about wondering what's in the drink. Like, that's horrible. I get where people are coming from there.
Yeah, it's interesting when all of the forces of our mainstream media and website blogs and whatever all conspired to hate on this song and tell all of us why it's horrible and evil. It just kind of made me go, okay, so what exactly is I mean, I've always kind of felt it's a weird song, but yeah, it's important to know why they wrote it and who is actually the character in the song or who are the characters and what is their story. there are a lot of opinions about this, and who has the right to cancel it or what it really is about. I think it's weird in it was in the movie Elf, like where they kind of sing a duet about it.
Elf
But
is now canceled.
yes, wasn't it in the moment where she's in the shower and he's in the waiting room or something? I don't know.
I've only seen Elf once. I know.
Okay.
I go on the naughty list now. I think we saw it like 2 years ago just because nobody else would shut up about it, and it's even on my liquid coffee creamer jar. It's just everywhere. New holiday standard.
So, but yeah, part of me, I just had a knee-jerk reaction of, okay, when everyone is like telling you to, when it's sort of the mob mentality of like, oh, it's time to cancel this thing. It's like, well, okay, I maybe not going to jump on that bandwagon, but I'll make my own decision about it. But then it was actually rewritten, apparently. So this was in 2019. The controversial 1944 song has been officially rewritten. It's been given the John Legend treatment.
Oh, I think I remember hearing about this, but I did not
Yes.
actually hear this because it's not a favorite song. I'm not going to make it my favorite just because the bad people hate it. I'm just completely indifferent to it. It has no special meaning for me. It may have some special meaning for others.
Now, I'm quoting from a newspaper article, which we can link to, so I think it's okay. It says the award-winning singer revealed that some of the verses include lyrics. What will my friends think? I think they should rejoice. If I have one more drink, it's your body and your choice.
Oh, come on now. Now that's just preachy. I don't disagree with the message, like with Christian movies. Like, I don't mind if you end with an altar call. I don't disagree with it, but oh, blimey. Yeah, that's just, it's overdoing it back the other way.
Right, exactly. So now it's becoming a propaganda tool, basically.
Just a bit.
Yeah.
I should have mentioned, I wonder, does this go on the nice list or the naughty list? There is a version, I should have mentioned this earlier, but there's a version of Little Drummer Boy performed to heavy metal by Saruman the White. I am not making this Little Drummer Boy version up. It's Christopher Lee saying, "Come, they told me," and this heavy metal thrashing in the background. I'm not sure it's the most musically sound, but it certainly is a novelty. Go find that. It's out there somewhere on the YouTubes.
Okay.
Tisha Messing, by the way, mentioned, no, I think she was being more positive here, so I don't want to revert to chapter 2. But she mentioned, I grew up with lots of novelty Christmas albums, truly weird ones. Elvis, Boney M. She says, we briefly lived in Hong Kong and my mom got it there. And Alvin and the Chipmunks. She says, if you want to hear the rest of my family cry out in pain. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that. There's this 60s kitsch that accompanies novelty albums like that that I personally find distasteful, that others probably do. But if you probably do, then you probably have Christmas lights shaped like the lamp light from A Christmas Story on your Christmas tree, possibly also festooned by little red pickup trucks with the Christmas tree poking out the back, and possibly even Mater from Cars. That's the kind of kitsch that doesn't agree with me personally. Even though apparently I found out last night that Zach at our Lorehaven Christmas party, I am the type of person who will wear a necklace of lit up Christmas lights. I didn't know that I'd be that kitschy. So it's not a matter of being kitschy or not, but just having a particular flavor of kitsch.
I'll add 2 more items here to my list. One is, these are more like mixed bag. Okay. Deck the Halls, mainly because just the fa la 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 just gets repetitive.
Oh, I like Deck the Halls though. It's a classic.
Yeah.
Plus, it's all progressive because you're donning a certain kind of apparel.
Oh gosh,
this song was ahead of its time. It's on the right side of history.
Moving on. The other song that's kind of in my mixed bag here is, believe it or not, Silent Night. Now, I love the song.
Heresy.
I love the lyrics. I love the candlelight service that we, churches everywhere do. This is the last song we light the candles. However, having little kids, this song is very stressful for me when we get to the candle lighting part.
Yes. Of course, because they are going to drip hot wax all over their little tender hands.
Yes, and with our youngest daughter, who's just a very highly sensitive kid and just very nervous about this part, and then my younger son, this gets very hairy, as in I really hope no one's hair lights on fire while we do this.
So how do you feel about, we haven't mentioned Away in the Manger, but I like Away in the Manger. I would put that in the top Christmas songs. But isn't the second verse kind of Gnostic? Because a lot of people have gotten grumpy
Hmm.
about the cattle are lowing, the poor baby wakes, but little Lord Jesus, no crying he makes. And everybody
Oh,
points and
okay.
laughs and says, see, like this is the problem with these saccharine
Mm.
evangelical versions of the nativity narrative. You've got this perfect birth, it's completely bloodless, there's no labor pains. Certain types of Christian or Christianish traditions would actually have the infant Christ child beamed out of Mary by means of some spiritual conveyance. And it kind of removes the whole God in flesh aspect and all that that implies because it causes some people some discomfort. I don't necessarily see that in the song lyric, but I can understand how it can come across that way to people. Like, yes, the infant Christ child did cry, whether or not it was provoked by the lowing cattle. Yes, there was certainly labor pains. It was certainly a messy delivery in the stable and all that stuff that I think we do need to be reminded of. But I think if people get too cranky about that, then you miss the true meaning of Christmas, and you need to go on a smarmy journey.
Yeah. The other part of the song I always thought was weird was I love you, Lord Jesus, look down from the sky and stay by my side or by my cradle until morning is
Oh
nigh.
no! If you're a real man, you
And
sing "Cradle" and you mean it from your
ah,
heart.
but see
Stay
what's
by
so
my
weird about that
cradle.
is like you're asking for baby Jesus to look down. I mean, that brings up the Talladega Nights where Ricky Bobby prays to baby Jesus. So I don't know. It
I think it's a sincere expression of worship. It's knowing that Jesus is no longer the little baby who won't cry in the manger.
mm,
I think there's a translation thing there. Like maybe the original, well, or was it translated? I don't remember. The song has often been incorrectly referred to as Luther's Cradle Hymn. I think mainly because it was written, if I recall, by a Lutheran, but Martin Luther himself didn't write it. So I don't remember whether there's a language barrier or not. But with songs like Silent Night, like it was originally written, I think it was written in Switzerland or something, but it was written in German. And so you have to basically rewrite the song in order to get it to rhyme. But I don't remember if Away in the Manger was written in English. It's a simple little song. There's not a lot of theological depth in there. I don't like the take us to heaven to live with thee there. It's very soft soap, but it's not anti-Christian. It's just kind of sentimental, and yet there's a soft place in my heart for it. Well, on that note, if we didn't make you too sleepy with a Christmas lullaby, what are your favorite Christmas songs? What are the worst Christmas songs you've ever heard? And when should you start and or stop listening to Christmas music? We've gotten a lot of feedback from our guild heroes before this episode, but you may still have some feedback that we'll read in a future version of the com station. It's email podcast at lorehaven.com, or you can subscribe free at lorehaven.com, get your exclusive invitation to the guild, jump in, share your thoughts in the new recording studios room that we have in the guild castle. We're going to do some more behind the scenes stuff leading up to and then after each of the podcast episodes. You can also, of course, find us on the social media. Hey, Zach, speaking of the com station, we have a lot of feedback now after the big news that we've had about a couple of Christian or Christian associated fantasy series, one that's been announced and one that just debuted last week from Angel Studios. That was the Wingfeather Saga series based on the best-selling fantasy by Andrew Peterson. I've not seen it yet. I still need to read the book. I admit it. We had a book quest and everything for On the Edge of the Dark Sea of Darkness that we've just wrapped up, coinciding with the start of the show. But we also posted a news post on November 18, 2022, which is after a Daily Wire Plus announced a new streaming series based on Stephen R. Lawhead's Pendragon cycle. That's an Arthurian retelling that involves Atlantis and fantasy and history, and I've not read it, but a lot of our fans have read it, and they
yeah.
shared their thoughts about this news.
Yeah, so Carrie Green commented and said, quote, I'm halfway through the cycle now and I've loved it. And we also got a note from Lisa who said it took me 10 minutes to read this short article because I am beyond excited. Please be quality. Please, my favorite author and my favorite series tied with his Song of Albion. When I first read these books 30 years ago, it made me want to be a better Christian. So good.
Oh, that's a great motivation from reading a
Yeah,
fantasy series. Made me want to be a better Christian. In other words,
that's
made me want
great.
to be more like Jesus.
Yeah. Chris had this to say: please, please, please do this series justice. It could be a cultural phenomenon if done right. And finally, we got a note from Ink Slinger Journal, who says, I read the first 3 books when they were released, and it was one of the best stories, and they remain with me all these years later.
What's fascinating about that announcement is that the Daily Wire CEO, Jeremy Boring, and by the way, disclaimer, this company is associated with cultural conservatism and lots of political activism, but they've lately been saying, hey guys, all of our cultural opponents own the culture, so we need to make some culture. And we've actually had Frank Fleming, who's now with Daily Wire, helping out with putting together some kids series on there. We've had him on the podcast talking about what they're up to there. As much as he could say, they have yet to announce more stuff. But in that announcement, Boring, yes, that's his name, said that they were going to release this streaming series next year, and all they showed was an artwork, kind of a poster type thing, or a banner, really, saying the Pendragon Cycle by Stephen R. Lawhead. I've not heard anything about this series. I don't know if it's being kept under tight wraps or if someone else has made it and then they sold the rights to Daily Wire Plus. If it's coming out that soon, then you think we would have heard something. So it's interesting that most of the attention in that announcement went to a much more politically charged series that they said, or a movie that they were doing based on Ayn Rand's Atlas Shrugged, which I've not read and I'm frankly just not that interested in. Not just because I don't think it's fantasy, but it just seems like a more agenda-driven story, and you know how we feel about those here. But I'm very interested in this Pendragon Cycle, and actually got the first book in audio version, so I can try to catch up to this. But I'd be very curious how they're going to come out with a whole streaming series that quickly. But they said very determinedly 2023. So we will keep you all updated and post any more news at lorehaven.com. Don't miss at Lorehaven, by the way. Let's go to our mission log real quick as we wrap to a close here. Don't miss Marion Jacobs' popular article at the site. It was titled, Even If We Like Fantasy and Sci-Fi, We Can Still Practice Accidental Legalism. Hey, she had some really wise thoughts to share there. We'll have that link and all these others in our show notes. Next up this week, hopefully this Thursday after the episode debuts here, Josiah DeGraff has that article we've been working on. He will explore how to discern morality in Christian fiction without expecting every story to act like a sermon, because, of course, sermons and stories have very different goals, or they ought to. We've got new reviews every Friday at lorehaven.com. We've reviewed Aberration by Kathy McCrum, a science fiction novel. We also just reviewed Calor. It's a new novel coming out from the same publisher, Enclave. That was our top sponsor for this show. I believe that release date is actually today, the release date of this episode. So you can find more information there at Lorehaven. And then this week in the Lorehaven Guild, we are starting our new book quest, Dream of Kings. That's the Sharon Hink standalone fantasy. We reviewed that at Lorehaven, and that's our 12th monthly book quest in the Guild. There's lots of exploration in the Guild about Christian-made fantasy and other fandoms, and we're doing some renovations there to encourage even more discussion. More than 215 heroes now in the Guild, and you can join them. You can be the next hero by subscribing free at lorehaven.com. Choose your site updates, plus get that exclusive invitation to be a Guild hero. We're opening more of those rooms, at least in a beta stage for the month of December, before we do a more soft relaunch, I guess you could call it, coming up for the new year of 2023. Next on Fantastical Truth. Some months ago, there was a certain other Lord of the Rings-ish TV show, which we've not talked much about because we want to be friendly to everybody, but it prompted some fans to say, well, this show's going to be terrible, and now we're really going to appreciate the Hobbit films as bad as they were. But after that certain other show, I didn't see a whole lot of appreciation for the Hobbit films. Mostly the fans just wanted to criticize that other show. For my part, though, I never stopped appreciating the Hobbit films, even though they have a lot of flaws. That's why I feel alone in a company of dwarves who really seem to hate the Hobbit films. But that first movie in that new trilogy, The Hobbit: An Unexpected Journey, actually released 10 years ago this month. And next week, an old friend of mine, my old friend, returns to explore the Hobbit film trilogy. That's our next episode on Fantastical Truth. Meanwhile, whenever you start and stop your Christmas music, whatever songs you love, whatever songs you hate that we loved, whatever songs you love that we hate, it's all in good fun. Christmas is an extra biblical tradition, but wow, what an amazing tradition that people have put together with the sacred songs and the secular songs alike, and some sacred songs with some secular moments and vice versa. All of it, I think, in the hands of a mature, celebrating believer can give glory to God. Let's be more like Jesus as we enjoy this music together, but be mindful of the different tastes of your neighbors as we continue to seek and find his fantastical truth.